My name is Flora Mitchell. I'm 31. For my parents' 40th anniversary, I flew 3,000 miles with a gift wrapped in gold paper. Before I could even sit down, Mom looked at me and said, "We didn't invite you. Your sister planned this." Then Dad pushed my gift off the table and said, "We don't want anything from the daughter who abandoned us." I picked it up, and I left. When they found out what was inside, what it cost me, what it meant, and who actually paid for the roof over their heads, they drove 14 hours straight to my front door. Before I take you back to the beginning, if you end up liking this story, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if it genuinely stays with you. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from, and what time is it there? Now, let me take you back 5 years, to the day I found out my parents were about to lose their house. I grew up in Hardin, Ohio. Population 4,000, give or take a few who wandered off and never came back. My father, Gerald Mitchell, fixed pipes for a living. My mother, Judith, worked part-time at the grocery store on Route 31. And my older sister, Vivian, 4 years ahead of me in everything, was the sun the whole house orbited around. I don't say that with bitterness. I say it because it's true. Vivian was loud where I was quiet. She told stories at dinner while I cleared the plates. As she brought home report cards with a speech attached, I brought home the same grades and left them on the counter. Dad would hold up Vivian's and say, "That's my girl." Mine stayed on the counter until Mom filed them away. There was this thing Dad used to say at family barbecues. He'd point his beer at Vivian, then at me, and go, "Vivian got the brains, Flora's Flora." Everyone laughed. I laughed too. I was 8 the first time I heard it. I was 18 the last time. And the joke never changed. Neither did the audience. I went to nursing school, graduated, got a job offer in Denver, Colorado, and packed everything I owned into 2 suitcases and a cardboard box. The morning I left, Dad was fixing a pipe under the kitchen sink. I stood in the doorway and said, "Bye, Dad." He didn't come out from under the sink, just said, "Good, one less mouth." That was June 15th, my birthday. I didn't leave because I stopped loving them. And I left because staying meant disappearing. And I was already halfway gone. For the first year in Denver, I called home every Sunday, 7 p.m., without fail. Mom picked up sometimes. Dad never did. By the second year, the calls went to voicemail more than they didn't. I texted Vivian about it. "They're busy," she wrote back. "Don't take it personally." Then a week later, "You know how Dad is. He thinks you abandoned us." I sent birthday gifts, Christmas packages, and a hand-knit scarf I spent 3 weekends making for Mom. I never heard a word about any of them. When I asked Vivian, she sighed and said, "I think they threw it away without opening it, Flora. I'm sorry." That sentence sat in my chest like a stone. Then one Thanksgiving, Aunt Martha, Mom's younger sister, called me. We were talking about nothing in particular when she said, "By the way, your mom just loves that scarf you sent, wears it every Sunday to church." I went quiet. "Flora? You there?" "Martha?" "Vivian told me they threw it away." Long pause. Then Martha said very carefully, "That's not what happened." I didn't push her, not that day. But something shifted inside me. A crack in the story I'd been told, just wide enough to see light through. I started paying closer attention to the things Vivian said versus the things that were actually true, and the gap between them kept getting wider. I didn't have proof of anything yet, just a feeling. It's the kind you get when someone's been rearranging the furniture in your life and telling you it was always that way. "Flora, they just don't think about you that much," Vivian had said once. "I'm sorry." She said, "I'm sorry" a lot. It never sounded like she meant it. The call came on a Tuesday, March, 5 years ago. I was 26, pulling a double shift in the ICU, when my phone buzzed with Aunt Martha's name. Her voice was tight. "Honey, I need to tell you something. Your parents are 3 months behind on the mortgage. The bank sent a final notice." I leaned against the hallway wall. "How bad is it?" "Bad enough that they could lose the house by summer." "Does Vivian know?" "Vivian told them she'd handle it." Pause. "But I haven't seen any payments go through, and your father won't talk about it. You know how he is." That night, I sat in my apartment and stared at the wall for an hour. Then I called the bank, First National in Hardin. I asked to speak to whoever managed residential mortgages. They transferred me to a man named Dave Keller, branch manager. Calm voice, patient. I explained who I was, asked about the account status. He confirmed. 3 months overdue, foreclosure process starting. Then he said something that stopped me cold. Actually, someone else called last week claiming to be a family member, said they'd take care of it. He paused. But they never followed up with any payment. I knew exactly who that was. Vivian had called, made the promise, and never sent a dime. That was the first time I realized my sister wasn't just careless. She was calculating. I told Dave I wanted to set up automatic payments from my account, monthly, anonymous. Don't tell anyone the payments are coming from me, I said. Not my parents, not my sister, no one. He agreed, and I called Martha and said 5 words. Don't tell anyone, especially Vivian. $2,300 a month. That's what invisible love looks like. I was making decent money as a charge nurse at a hospital in Denver. Decent, not rich. After rent, groceries, student loans, and the new mortgage payment, I had about $200 left each month for everything else. So I made choices. No vacations, no dinners out. I bought clothes from Goodwill and furniture from estate sales. When my car needed new tires, I picked the cheapest ones and drove slow in the rain. Tommy Reed, my boyfriend, a carpenter with steady hands and a quiet way of seeing things, figured out what I was doing within 3 months. I didn't tell him. He just noticed I stopped buying coffee on the way to work, and then he noticed the spreadsheet on my laptop, and then he sat down on the bed and said, "It's the house, isn't it?" I nodded. He didn't say I was crazy. He didn't say I should stop. He said, "Okay, I'll fix the porch railing myself so we don't have to hire anyone." That was Tommy. No speeches, just lumber and a level. For 5 years, I worked extra shifts. I picked up holidays, weekends, overnights. I didn't complain. Every month, $2,300 left my account and landed in my parents' mortgage. And every month, the balance got a little smaller. My parents never called. Not once. Not on my birthday, not on Christmas, not when I got promoted to charge nurse. But the mortgage stayed current. And the foreclosure notices stopped, and the house on Maple Drive stayed standing. I never asked for a thank you, but I didn't know someone else was already getting thanked for what I was doing. Aunt Martha was my only window into what happened back in Hardin. She'd call me every few weeks, careful not to say too much, careful not to say too little. But one evening, about 2 years in, her voice sounded different, harder. "I need to tell you something," she said, "and you're not going to like it." Vivian had told my parents she was the one paying the mortgage. Not helping, not contributing, paying, the whole thing. According to Martha, Dad stood up at Thanksgiving dinner, the table full of cousins, uncles, neighbors, and raised his glass. "To Vivian," he said, "the only one who actually cares about this family." Everyone clapped. Mom cried. Vivian smiled and said, "It's nothing, Dad. You'd do the same for me." It wasn't nothing. It was $2,300 a month that came from my checking account in Denver, every penny of it mine, and my sister was sitting in my parents' dining room, soaking up the credit like sunlight, but it got worse. Martha told me that Vivian used this new status, this borrowed hero badge, to convince Dad to put her name on their bank accounts, to let her manage the family finances. She even got added to the insurance paperwork, all with Dad's grateful blessing. She's positioning herself," Martha said flatly, "and your parents are handing her the keys." I felt sick, but I didn't call them. I didn't expose her. I told myself, as long as the house is safe, it doesn't matter who gets the credit. Then Martha said the thing that cracked me open. "Your father told your cousin Bobby last week, exact words, 'I raised one good daughter and one stranger.'" I hung up, and I didn't call anyone for 3 days. Then the holidays stopped, including me around year 3. Thanksgiving. "Mom's not feeling well," Vivian texted. "Better if you don't come this year." Christmas. "Dad doesn't want any drama. Maybe just call." Easter. Nothing. No text, no call, just silence. But through Martha, I knew the truth. The house was full every holiday. Cousins drove in from Columbus. Uncle Ray brought his famous pie. The neighbors came for dessert. Everyone was there. Everyone except me. Vivian had built a wall around my family and put herself at the gate. And nobody questioned it because, as far as they knew, she was the one keeping the roof over their heads. Meanwhile, I kept paying. Every single month. The balance went from 140,000 down to 80. Then 60. Then 40. I watched the numbers fall on my bank app like some kind of reverse countdown, not to something beginning, but to something ending. Tommy asked me one night while we were doing dishes, "When does this end, Flora?" I dried a plate, set it on the rack. "When the house is paid off," I said. "Then I'll know they're safe. That's enough." He looked at me the way he sometimes did, like he could see the cost of what I was carrying and wished he could split it in half. "Is it, though?" he asked. "Is it enough?" I didn't answer. The final payment cleared in September. 5 years, 60 monthly transfers, $137,412 total. The house on Maple Drive was free and clear, owned outright by Gerald and Judith Mitchell. And 2 weeks later, I got the one thing I never expected, an invitation, sort of. I was scrolling through Facebook on a Sunday morning when I saw it. Vivian's post, bright and public. "Planning Mom and Dad's 40th anniversary party. Family only. October 14th. It's going to be so special." 200 likes, 40 comments. Cousins tagging each other. Neighbors asking what to bring. Uncle Ray promising 3 pies this time. No message to me, no call, no text. I sat with my phone in my hand for a long time. Then I called Vivian. She picked up on the 4th ring. "Flora, hi. I saw the post. When should I book my flight?" Silence. Then, "Oh, I didn't think you'd want to come. It's their 40th anniversary, Vivian." "I know, but Dad said he doesn't want any awkwardness." "Did Dad say that? Or did you?" Another pause, longer this time. Bet I could hear her recalculating. "I'm just trying to protect everyone, Flora." "From what? From me showing up to my own parents' anniversary?" "It's not like that." "Then what is it like?" She exhaled, sharp and thin. "Look, I just don't want this to turn into a thing. You haven't been around. People will ask questions." "Let them ask." "Flora." "I'll be there." I hung up. My hands were shaking. Not from anger, from something deeper. 5 years of silence. And my sister was still deciding whether I existed. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Tommy rolled over and said, "You're going, aren't you?" "Yeah." "Good." He paused. "What are you bringing?" I thought about it for exactly 1 second. The truth. He didn't ask what I meant, but I think he already knew. And somewhere in that dark room, something inside me shifted from hoping to deciding. "You don't get to erase me from my own family, Vivian. Not anymore." The next morning, I called Dave Keller at First National. "Dave, it's Flora Mitchell." "Flora, good to hear from you. Congratulations, by the way. That last payment went through clean." "That's actually why I'm calling. I need the original mortgage satisfaction certificate and a full statement of all payments made over the past 5 years. Every transaction, every date." He was quiet for a moment. "You sure you want all of that? It shows everything. Your name, your account, every transfer." "That's exactly why I want it. Give me a few days. I'll have it all notarized and ready." The package arrived the following week. A thick manila envelope from First National Bank. Inside, the payoff certificate, crisp, official, stamped with the bank seal. Behind it, 60 pages of transaction records. My name on every single one. I also wrote a letter. 1 page handwritten on plain white paper. I won't tell you what it said, not yet. But I'll say this. It took me 4 tries to get through it without crying, and when I finally sealed it, my hands were steady. I put everything into a box. A nice one, sturdy, from the craft store on 6th. Then I wrapped it in gold paper. Not because I'm fancy, but because it was my parents' wedding color. 40 years ago, their cake had gold ribbons. Mom kept one in her jewelry box for decades. I thought she'd remember. The morning of my flight, Tommy drove me to the airport. At the curb, he held my bag while I stood there with the gold box tucked under my arm. "Whatever happens," he said, "you already did the right thing." 5 years of the right thing. I kissed him and walked inside. I didn't know then that I'd be back in less than 24 hours, without the box. The flight from Denver to Columbus was 3 hours and 12 minutes. I spent all of it with the gold box on my lap, running my thumb along the edge of the wrapping. I rented a car at the airport, a small gray sedan. Drove east on I-70 for an hour and a half until the highway narrowed into two-lane roads and the landscape turned into the flat, green, wide-open Ohio I remembered. Grain silos, white churches, that gas station on Route 31 that's been closing soon since I was in middle school. I turned onto Maple Drive at 4:15 in the afternoon, and there it was, the house. Same brown siding, same chain-link fence, same cracked driveway. But today there were balloons tied to the mailbox. A homemade banner hung across the porch, Happy 40th Gerald and Judith. Cars lined both sides of the street. I counted at least 20. I parked at the end of the block, cut the engine, sat there. Through the front windows I could see people moving. I could hear music, something country, turned up just enough to leak through the walls. Laughter. Voices layered over each other the way they do when a room is full. 60 people inside, and not one of them expecting me. And I looked at the gold box on the passenger seat. The corner of the wrapping had creased during the flight. I smoothed it with my fingertip. What if they still don't want me? What if I walk in there and nothing changes? I sat for 10 minutes, watched the light shift through the trees. Then I picked up the box, opened the car door, and stepped onto the sidewalk. The front door was 30 yards away. It might as well have been 3,000 miles. Then I opened the screen door and stepped inside. The living room had been rearranged. Tables pushed together in an L shape, covered in white cloth. Folding chairs borrowed from the church lined every wall. Flower arrangements sat on every flat surface. Vivian's touch, no doubt. A slideshow played on a laptop in the corner. Photos of Mom and Dad through the years. I wasn't in many of them. A few heads turned, then a few more. Mrs. Patterson, our old neighbor, was the first to speak. "Flora? Oh my goodness! We haven't seen you in years!" She said it loud enough that half the room heard. Conversations dimmed. Forks paused. Eyes moved from me to the gold box in my hands, then back to me. I scanned the room. Uncle Ray by the food table, Cousin Bobby near the window. A dozen faces I half recognized, and a dozen I didn't. Then I found her. Aunt Martha. She was standing near the kitchen doorway with a glass of iced tea, and the moment she saw me, her hand froze halfway to her mouth. Her eyes dropped to the box, then widened. She knew. She knew exactly what I was carrying. We looked at each other across the room. 5 years of secret keeping passed between us in a single glance. I could see the question on her face. "Are you sure?" I gave a small nod. Martha set her glass down and pressed her lips together. Then she nodded back. Just once. Firm. Behind me, the screen door creaked shut. In front of me, the murmur of the room rebuilt itself. Quieter now, but with a new frequency underneath, the low hum of something unexpected. People were watching, and I hadn't even said a word yet. Vivian was mid-sentence when she saw me. She'd been standing at the head of the table with a champagne glass, giving what sounded like the tail end of a toast. "And I'm so grateful I could give back to you both, especially with the house. Everything I've done, I did out of love." Applause, a few raised glasses, and Dad nodded from his chair like a king receiving tribute. Then Vivian's eyes drifted past the crowd and landed on me. The change was instant, not dramatic. She was too practiced for that. Just a flicker, a tightening around the mouth. Then the smile came back, wider, warmer, like she'd rehearsed it in a mirror. She set down her glass and walked toward me, every step measured. When she got close, she leaned in, not a hug, just close enough to whisper, "What are you doing here?" I told you Dad doesn't want you here." "I came to give Mom and Dad their gift," I said. My voice was even. My hands were not. Vivian glanced at the gold box. "What is that? Some last-minute thing from the airport gift shop?" I didn't answer. She stepped closer. "You should go, before Dad sees you." But it was too late. Across the room, Dad had turned in his chair, and Mom, sitting beside him, was already staring. In that moment, And I remembered something Dave Keller had said when he handed me the documents. Miss Mitchell, this is one of the most selfless things I've seen in 20 years at this bank. Your parents are lucky. Lucky. Standing in that living room, watching my sister block my path and my father's jaw tighten at the sight of me. Lucky felt like a word from someone else's language. But I kept walking. Mom saw me before Dad said anything. She was sitting to his left in a padded folding chair, her hands resting on a paper napkin she'd folded into a tiny square. When our eyes met, something moved across her face. Surprise, maybe relief, maybe guilt. I couldn't tell. It was there for half a second, then gone. The room was getting quieter. People were watching now, the way people watch when they can feel something coming but don't know what. Flora. Mom's voice was small. We didn't invite you. Your sister planned this. 60 people heard it. And I know because I could feel every single pair of eyes land on me at once. The silence wasn't empty. It was thick. It pressed against my skin. I know, I said. I came anyway. I have something for you and Dad. Mom looked at Dad. Dad looked at me. I don't know what I expected to see on his face. Surprise, maybe. Curiosity. Something human. What I got was stone. His mouth set in a flat line, his eyes narrow, and his arms folded across the front of his pressed Sunday shirt, like a gate swinging shut. He didn't say anything yet, but his body said everything. Behind me, I could feel Vivian moving closer. Beside me, the quiet hum of 60 people deciding whether to look away or lean in. Aunt Martha hadn't moved from her spot near the kitchen, but I could feel her watching me like a lighthouse watches a boat in bad water. I took another step forward, toward the table, toward my parents. But the gold box felt heavier than it had in the car. I didn't come to cause trouble, I said. I came because it's your 40th anniversary, and I'm your daughter. Dad's eyes dropped to the box, and his jaw tightened. I set the box on the table, right between the flower arrangement and the anniversary cake with its gold frosting letters. The wrapping caught the overhead light and flashed, just for a second, like something precious. Dad stared at it. His jaw worked side to side, the way it always did when he was building toward something. Then he reached out and pushed it, not gently, not a nudge, a flat-palmed shove that sent the box sliding across the tablecloth and off the edge. It hit the floor with a dull thud. One corner of the gold paper tore open. The room gasped, not loudly, more like 60 people inhaling at the same time. We don't want any cheap thing from you. Dad's voice was loud enough for the back row, for the cousins by the window, kick for the neighbors near the door. He wanted everyone to hear. You show up when you feel like it, disappear for years, and you think a box fixes everything? I didn't move. He pointed at Vivian. Your sister's been here. Vivian paid for this house. She planned this party. She showed up. Where were you? Vivian stood behind him, arms crossed, chin lifted. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. Her face said it all, that careful, well-practiced look of someone who'd already won and was just watching the other side realize it. A few guests shifted in their seats. Mrs. Patterson looked at her lap. Uncle Ray set down his fork. Cousin Bobby took a step backward, like the air near the table had turned sour. I looked at my father. My eyes were burning, my throat was tight, but my voice, when it came, was steady. And I knew exactly what I was going to do. I bent down and picked up the box. The torn corner of the gold paper hung loose. I smoothed it back into place with my thumb, carefully, the way you'd fix a child's bandage. I took my time. The whole room watched. Then I straightened up, looked at my father, looked at my mother, looked at Vivian. I didn't come here to beg, I said. I came to give you something I spent 5 years working for, but I won't stand here and be humiliated for loving you. Nobody moved. I turned around, walked past the folding chairs, past the slideshow still cycling through old photos, past Uncle Ray with his hands on his knees and Mrs. Patterson pressing a napkin to her mouth. 60 people, and not one of them said a word. Not one of them stood up. The only sound was my shoes on the hardwood and the low country song still playing from the speaker in the corner like it hadn't gotten the memo. Aunt Martha was standing near the front door, When I reached her, she caught my arm. Not hard, just enough to stop me. As she looked at the box, then at me. Her eyes were full and fierce. "Leave it with me," she whispered. "Trust me." I hesitated. Everything in me wanted to take it home, shove it in a closet, and never think about Hardin, Ohio again. But Martha's hand was steady, and her eyes said what her mouth didn't. "I've been quiet long enough." I placed the gold box in her hands. Then I walked out the front door, down the porch steps, and into the October air. I didn't look back. But I heard it. My mother saying my name. Just once. Very softly. And then nothing. Driving away from that street, I kept asking myself, why did I keep hoping? 5 years I'd paid their mortgage, and what did I get? A box shoved off a table and a door closed behind me. Have you ever given everything to someone who didn't even notice? Who looked right past your sacrifice and thanked someone else for it? What would you have done? Would you have left the box or taken it with you? Tell me in the comments. I really want to know. I was already on the highway when it started. I didn't see it happen, but Martha told me every detail later, and she's not a woman who exaggerates. If anything, she undersells. So when she told me what went down in that living room after I left, I believed every word. Here's what happened. The party tried to recover. Vivian clapped her hands and said, "Okay, everyone, let's not let this ruin Mom and Dad's night." Who wants cake?" A few people murmured. Someone picked up a fork. The music kept playing. But Martha didn't move. She stood near the door, holding my gold box, watching the room try to paste itself back together. She told me later she felt like she was holding a grenade with the pin already out. 5 years of someone else's lie, sitting right there in her hands. She walked to the center of the room. "Before anyone touches that cake," she said loud and clear, "there's something you all need to see." Gerald's head snapped up. "Martha, stay out of this." "No." Martha set the box on the table, the same table Dad had pushed it off of 2 minutes ago. "I've stayed out of it for 5 years. That ends tonight." Vivian moved fast. "Aunt Martha, this isn't the time." "Oh, this is exactly the time, Vivian." The room went absolutely still. Not quiet. Still. Like the air itself had stopped moving. Martha opened the box. Inside, in the manila envelope from First National Bank. The letter, sealed in its white envelope. Everything Flora had carried 3,000 miles to give her parents. Martha pulled out the envelope first, held it up so everyone could see the bank's return address. Then she opened it. Martha unfolded the certificate and held it at arm's length. Her reading glasses were already on. She'd put them on while walking to the table, like she'd been planning this for years. Maybe she had. She read it out loud, every word. "Mortgage satisfaction for 1427 Maple Drive, Hardin, Ohio, paid in full as of September 14th. Payoff completed by..." She paused, looked at Gerald, then at the room. "Flora Rose Mitchell. Total paid, $137,412. Silence. Not the awkward silence of before. This was something else. This was 60 people understanding all at once that the ground beneath them had shifted. Martha reached back into the envelope and pulled out a stack of papers. 60 pages, bank statements, transaction records. She held them up and fanned through them slowly. 5 years of payments, she said. $2,300 every month, from Flora's account in Denver. Her name, her money, every single line. Someone in the back row whispered, "Oh my God." I'm told Mrs. Patterson covered her mouth with both hands. Uncle Ray pushed his chair back from the table. Yet Cousin Bobby just stood there staring at Vivian. Gerald didn't move. His hand, the same hand that had shoved the box off the table, was gripping the edge of his chair, shaking. Mom pressed both palms flat against her face. Her shoulders started to move before any sound came out. Then the sound came, and it was the kind of crying that doesn't care who hears it. Martha lowered the papers. She looked directly at Gerald. "This is what was inside that cheap thing you just threw on the floor. The 5 years, $137,000, from the daughter you said didn't care." Nobody breathed. Gerald turned to Vivian. His face was something I wish I could have seen. Martha described it as a man watching his own house catch fire, every line, every crease, rearranging itself around a new understanding. You told me you were paying the mortgage. His voice was flat, dangerously flat. Vivian's face had gone white. Not pink, not flushed, white. Like someone had pulled a plug somewhere behind her eyes. I helped, she said. I contributed. Martha didn't flinch. Really? Because Dave Keller at First National confirmed that every payment, every single one, came from one account. Flora's. Not a dollar from you, Vivian. She paused. Not one. That's not. I meant I helped in other ways. A voice from the back. Aunt Donna, Gerald's sister, 70 years old and sharp as a kitchen knife. In what way? Exactly? Vivian opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. The room turned. You could feel it, like a tide reversing. The people who'd been nodding along to Vivian's toast 10 minutes ago were now staring at her, the way you stare at someone you've just realized you don't know at all. Uncle Ray shook his head slowly. Mrs. Patterson wouldn't even look in Vivian's direction. Cousin Bobby crossed his arms and leaned against the windowsill, his jaw tight. As Vivian took a step backward, then another. No one moved toward her. No one defended her. The silence around her was total. Gerald was still gripping the chair, but he wasn't looking at Vivian anymore. He was looking at the front door. The door Flora had walked through. The door he hadn't stopped her from reaching. The bank statement doesn't twist, Vivian. That was Martha. Quiet now, almost gentle. Almost. Martha reached into the box one more time. There's one more thing, she said. At the white envelope, my handwriting on the front, Mom and Dad. Martha looked at Gerald. Do you want to read this yourself, or do you want me to? Gerald didn't answer. His hands were shaking too badly to hold paper. Mom was still crying. The quiet kind now, the kind that comes after the loud kind runs out of air. Martha opened the letter. She read it slowly. Not all of it. She told me later she couldn't get through the whole thing without her voice breaking. So she gave them the parts that mattered most. Mom and Dad, I know you think I left because I didn't care, but I left so I could take care of you from where I was strong enough to. This house is yours. It always was. I just made sure nobody could take it away. Martha paused, steadied herself. I love you. I always have, even when you didn't see me. She folded the letter and set it on the table in front of Gerald. The room was wrecked. There's no other word for it. The older women were wiping their eyes with napkins. Uncle Ray had his head bowed. Two of the neighbors quietly headed for the door, not out of disrespect, but because they knew this wasn't their moment anymore. Mom reached across the table and pressed her fingers against the letter like she was touching Flora's face. Gerald sat there with his elbows on his knees and his head in his hands. 64 years old, and the man looked like he'd aged a decade in 5 minutes. Vivian was gone. At some time during the letter, she'd taken her purse and slipped out the back door without a word. Nobody noticed. Gerald pulled out his phone before Martha even finished putting the letter down. He dialed my number. I was merging onto I-70 West, the gold evening light cutting through the windshield, and I saw his name flash on the screen. I stared at it until it went to voicemail. He called again. Voicemail. Mom took the phone from him, dialed me herself. I watched her name appear. Judith Mitchell. I hadn't seen that on my screen in 3 years. Voicemail. Back in the living room, Martha told me this part. Gerald set the phone on the table and just stared at it, like he was waiting for it to ring itself, like technology might fix what he'd broken with his own hands. Martha said, She's probably on her way to the airport. She flew 3,000 miles for you, Gerald, and you didn't even let her sit down. He didn't respond. The guests began to leave. One by one, and then in groups, they gathered their coats and plates and murmured things like, beautiful party, that no one believed. The cake sat untouched. The banner still hung across the porch. Happy 40th. Old Mr. Holloway, the neighbor who'd lived across the street since before I was born, stopped at the door on his way out. He put his hand on Gerald's shoulder. You know, Gerald, he said, I always thought Flora was the quiet one. Turns out quiet doesn't mean gone. Gerald didn't look up. After everyone left, it was just Gerald and Judith at the table. Paper plates, cold food, a banner swaying in the draft from the screen door, and a letter from a daughter they hadn't spoken to in years, sitting open on the table between them. Martha told me they sat at that table for 3 hours. Judith didn't move the letter. She kept her hand on it like an anchor. Gerald read the bank statements, all 60 pages, one by one, running his finger down the columns of numbers. Every month. Every amount. My name, repeated 60 times like a heartbeat he'd been too deaf to hear. Around 11 o'clock, Martha went home. She'd offered to stay, but Gerald waved her off without looking up. Go, Martha. We need to sit with this. At midnight, Gerald finally spoke. I pushed it off the table, Judy. Judith looked at him. I pushed my own daughter's heart off the table. His voice cracked on the word heart. Martha told me later that she'd called Judith the next morning. And Judith said it was the first time in 40 years of marriage she'd heard Gerald Mitchell cry. Not tear up, cry. Judith put her hand over his. Then we drive, she said. It's 14 hours. Then we leave now. Gerald looked at her. Something passed between them. Not words, not even a decision. More like a surrender. The kind that happens when you finally stop fighting the thing you already know is true. At 3 a.m, Gerald backed his pickup out of the driveway. And Judith climbed in with a thermos of coffee and the gold box, rewrapped by Martha before she left. They pulled onto Route 31 heading west. Didn't call ahead, didn't text, just drove. The odometer turned over mile after mile in the dark. Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Nebraska, Wyoming, Utah, Colorado. 14 hours. At that exact moment, I was 30,000 feet in the air, flying home, staring at the empty seat next to me where a gold-wrapped box used to be. As Tommy was waiting at Denver International when I walked out of the terminal. He didn't ask how it went. He could see it on my face. He just picked up my bag, put his arm around my shoulders, and walked me to the truck. We drove home in silence. Not the uncomfortable kind. The kind where someone loves you enough to know that words would only make it heavier. When we got inside, I sat down on the couch. I didn't take off my jacket, didn't turn on the lights. It just sat there in the dark living room while Tommy locked the front door and put the kettle on. Then it hit me. Not slowly, not like a wave building, like a wall falling. I pressed my face into the throw pillow and cried in a way I hadn't cried since I was a child. Loud, graceless, shaking. Tommy sat beside me. He put his hand on my back and he didn't say a word. Not, it's okay, not, they don't deserve you, not any of the things people say when they don't know what else to offer. He just stayed. After a long time, I sat up, wiped my face with my sleeve, turned off my phone. I didn't want to hear from anyone in Ohio. Not tonight, not yet. The next morning, I did what I always do. Got up at 5, made coffee, sat on the front porch in my bathrobe with the mug warm in my hands, watching the Denver sky lighten from black to gray to blue. Was I wrong to go? Was I wrong to hope? I kept turning it over, like a stone in my pocket I couldn't stop touching. And at exactly 6:07 a.m., I heard a car pull up. I didn't recognize the truck at first. A dusty white pickup, road grime on the fenders, Ohio plates. It parked crooked against the curb, like whoever was driving had stopped in a hurry. The engine ticked in the morning quiet. Then the driver's door opened, and my father stepped out. Gerald Mitchell, 64 years old, rumpled flannel shirt, same one from the party, eyes red-rimmed. Hair pushed to one side from 14 hours of leaning against a headrest. He looked like he'd aged 5 years overnight. Mom came around from the passenger side. She was holding the gold box, rewrapped, the torn corner patched with fresh tape. She clutched it against her chest like it might fly away. They stood at the end of my walkway, 20 feet of concrete between us. Dad didn't move. He just stood there, his hands at his sides, his mouth working like he was chewing on something that wouldn't go down. 14 hours of driving, and he still didn't know what to say first. I stayed on the porch, coffee in hand, bathrobe, bare feet on cold wood. We looked at each other. The neighborhood was waking up. A dog barked somewhere. A sprinkler hissed on 2 doors down. The whole ordinary world kept moving around us while we stood still. Then my father spoke. His voice was hoarse, stripped down to nothing. I'm sorry, Flora. 3 words, 7 letters, and they were the 3 words I'd waited my entire life to hear from that man. He swallowed, tried again. I pushed away the only person who was actually holding us up. I didn't run to him. I didn't collapse. I stood on my porch with my coffee getting cold, and I let those words land where they needed to land. Mom broke first. She came up the walkway with the box still pressed against her, tears already falling, and stopped at the bottom of the porch steps. She didn't try to come up. She waited. I knew. Her voice was barely there. Deep down, I knew Vivian wasn't telling the truth. I saw things that didn't add up, and I told myself it wasn't my place to question. But I was scared. Scared of your father, scared of losing Vivian, scared of everything. She looked up at me. I let him push your gift off the table, Flora, in front of everyone, and I just sat there. I know. Mom. I'll never forgive myself for that. I looked at her for a long time, at the box in her arms, at the tape on the corner, at the dark circles under her eyes. Then I stepped aside and held the door open. Come in, I said. Both of you. It wasn't warm. I want to be honest about that. I didn't fall into anyone's arms. I made tea. I set out mugs. I moved through my own kitchen with the steady efficiency of a woman who's spent 5 years taking care of people without being thanked for it. And then I let that rhythm carry me because it was the only thing keeping my hands from shaking. Tommy came out of the bedroom, said a quiet hello, shook Gerald's hand, and disappeared into the garage. He knew this wasn't his conversation. We sat at my kitchen table, the $4 estate sale table I'd eaten 1,000 quiet dinners at, and I said the thing I'd carried even longer than the mortgage. I love you, but I won't go back to being invisible. Mom nodded, fast and broken. And Dad just looked at his hands. I'm glad you came, I said, but showing up once doesn't erase 5 years of silence. Dad nodded. He didn't argue, didn't explain, didn't tell me I was being unfair. That, more than the apology, told me something had actually shifted. Over the next hour, they told me what happened after I left the party. The news traveled the way news always does in a small town, fast and without mercy. By Sunday morning, and half of Hardin knew that Vivian Mitchell had lied about paying her parents' mortgage. By Monday, the other half knew. The church prayer group, the grocery store, the diner on Main where Dad had coffee every morning. People didn't confront Vivian directly. They didn't have to. They just stopped calling, stopped waving, stopped saving her a seat. In a town of 4,000, silence is its own verdict. Gerald told me he'd removed Vivian's name from every joint account. Went to the bank that Tuesday, sat across from Dave Keller, who handled it without a single "I told you so," and signed the papers himself. She had access to things she shouldn't have, Dad said quietly. That's on me. They also hired a local attorney to audit everything Vivian had touched. It was precautionary, Dad said, but the look on his face told me he was afraid of what they'd find. Vivian, for her part, sent a group text to the whole family 3 days after the party. A long, winding message about how Martha had manipulated the situation and turned everyone against her. She called herself the real victim. Nobody replied. Martha sent me a screenshot and a single line. The whole town's talking, not about the money, about the kind of person you are. I read it twice. Then I put my phone down and went back to work. Before they left, I sat them down one more time. The tea was cold by then. The morning sun had moved across the kitchen floor and reached the far wall. We'd been talking for 3 hours, and most of it had been them talking. I'd listened. Now it was my turn. If we're going to rebuild this, I said, I need a few things. Dad straightened in his chair. Mom folded her hands. I need you to call me, not just when something goes wrong, regularly. I need to hear from you because you want to, not because you feel guilty. Dad nodded. I need you to stop letting one person decide who's in this family and who's not. That goes for Vivian, and it goes for anyone else. Another nod. And I need you to never, ever let anyone speak for me again. If you want to know how I feel, ask me. Not my sister, not a neighbor, me. The kitchen was quiet. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere outside, Tommy's saw started up in the garage, a faint buzz through the wall. Dad cleared his throat. Can I? He stopped, started again. Can I hug you? I looked at him for a long time. This man who'd called me one less mouth, who'd pushed my gift off a table in front of 60 people, who'd driven 14 hours through the night with red eyes and a cracked voice to stand in my driveway and say 3 words. I stood up, walked around the table, and let him hold me. It wasn't forgiveness yet. I want to be clear about that. It was a door I chose to leave open, and there's a difference. I don't need you to make up for the past, I said into his shoulder. I need you to show up for the future. He held on tighter. That was 3 months ago. Dad calls every Sunday now. 7 p.m., without fail. Sometimes we talk for an hour. Sometimes it's 10 minutes about the weather and what Tommy's building in the garage. But he calls, every week. He hasn't missed one. Mom sends handwritten cards. And not long letters, just little notes on the floral stationery she's used since I was a kid. Thinking of you. Saw a cardinal today and remembered you loved them. Small things, real things. They flew to Denver for Christmas. First time either of them had been on a plane in 20 years. Dad white-knuckled the armrests the whole flight. Mom brought homemade cookies packed in 3 layers of bubble wrap. We ate dinner at my $4 estate sale table, and nobody mentioned the empty chair where Vivian might have sat. Vivian. People ask about her. I didn't cut her off. That's not what this is. I just stopped chasing. If she wants to be in my life, she knows where to find me. But she doesn't get to rewrite the story anymore. I went back to work at the hospital the Monday after everything happened. Clocked in, checked vitals, changed IVs. The world doesn't pause because your family finally sees you. It just keeps going, and you go with it. That Tommy asked me one evening while we were washing dishes. Same spot, same question, different weight behind it. So was it worth it? All 5 years? I set a plate on the rack. Same rack, same plate, same life, but different. Every single month. I'm not telling you to pay off someone's mortgage to earn their love. That's not the lesson. The lesson is simpler. Don't let anyone convince you that your kindness makes you weak. And don't ever let anyone else narrate your story. And I didn't win my parents back with money. I won them back by refusing to disappear. When I tell this story, I still wonder, should I have told the truth sooner? If I'd called my parents 5 years ago and said, "It's me, I'm the one paying your mortgage," maybe none of this would have happened. Maybe Dad would have believed me. Or maybe Vivian would have found a way to twist that too. What do you think? Should I have told my parents from the start? Or was keeping it quiet the right call? I've gone back and forth on this 100 times and I still don't have a clean answer. Let me know in the comments. I'd honestly love to hear what you'd have done differently. That's my story. Whether you've been the Flora in your family, or you know someone who has, I hope it reminds you that being quiet doesn't mean being weak. Sometimes the people who make the least noise carry the most weight. If this story meant something to you, please hit like and subscribe. And if you want another story about someone who refused to be underestimated, check the link in the description. I picked it just for you. Thank you for staying with me all the way through. I'll see you in the next one. Most brides worry about rain on their wedding day. I watched my parents walk into my reception wearing head-to-toe black, like they were burying me. 150 guests turned their heads. The whispering started before my mother even reached the microphone. She didn't wait for an invitation. She walked straight up to the stage, took the mic from our DJ's hand, and looked right at me. "We are mourning the daughter we lost." What she said next made my hands shake. But what my husband did after that, that's the part no one in that room will ever forget. Before I go on, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely connect with this story. Drop your location and local time in the comments. I love knowing where you all are. I'm Wanda, I'm 29, and this is the story of how my own family tried to rob me at my wedding. Now let me take you back 18 months, to the day I wrote a check that changed everything. I grew up in Macon Hills, Tennessee, the kind of town where everyone knows your business before you do. Population 4,000, 1 traffic light, and a church parking lot that doubles as the town gossip exchange every Sunday morning. In the Mosley household, there were 2 daughters. Brielle was the sun. I was the background. My sister could walk into any room and every head would turn. Blonde hair, easy laugh, a voice that made strangers feel like old friends. Our parents, Janet and Bobby Mosley, built their entire social identity around her. Dance recitals, homecoming court, church talent shows. If Brielle breathed, they clapped. I was different, quiet, steady. I got straight A's, worked the register at the farm supply store from 16, cooked dinner when Mom was too busy driving Brielle to rehearsals. None of that made the refrigerator, and I mean that literally. Our fridge was covered in Brielle's photos, competition ribbons, prom pictures, a magazine clipping from the local paper when she won Miss Macon Hill's teen. My stuff? One photo, bottom corner, half hidden behind the church calendar. I taped my honor roll certificate up there once, right at eye level. By morning it was gone. I found it folded in the junk drawer. I didn't say anything. That's the thing about growing up invisible. After a while, you stop expecting to be seen. Your sister has a gift for connecting with people, Wanda. You're more of a behind-the-scenes kind of girl. That's what my mother said at Christmas dinner. 12 relatives at the table. I was 17. Everyone nodded like she'd said something kind. I smiled, cleared the plates, and told myself it didn't matter. It mattered. Fast forward 11 years. I'm 27, living in a small apartment across town, working double shifts as a veterinary technician at the county animal clinic. I love animals. Animals don't play favorites. One Tuesday evening, my phone rang. Mom. Wanda, we need you to come home. It's urgent. The house was falling apart. Roof leaking in 3 places. Foundation cracked along the east wall. The plumbing, original pipes from 1979, had burst twice in 6 months. Dad's pension and Mom's part-time bookkeeping barely covered groceries. A full renovation was out of the question, unless someone stepped in. There was a family meeting. Mom sat at the head of the kitchen table, Dad beside her, hands folded. I sat across from them. Brielle wasn't there. She'd texted the group chat an hour before. Sorry, super busy. You guys figure it out. So I figured it out. $85,000. 10 years of double shifts, skipped vacations, and dollar store shampoo. I handed it over in a single cashier's check. New roof, new foundation work, new plumbing, fresh paint inside and out. I coordinated with the contractors myself, drove over every weekend to check progress, ate peanut butter sandwiches in my car between the clinic and the job site. When it was done, the house looked better than it had in 30 years. Mom hugged me on the front porch. Her eyes were wet. This house is yours, Wanda. When we're gone, it goes to you. You earned it. Dad nodded. You earned it, kiddo. No lawyer, no paperwork, no deed transfer. Just a promise between blood. That was the most expensive handshake of my life. I just didn't know it yet. 3 months after the renovation wrapped, a section of soffit on the back porch came loose. The previous crew had cut corners. Mom called me panicking, and I called around for a contractor who could fix it fast. That's how I met Cole Reston. He showed up in a dented white pickup, work boots, and a flannel with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, hands like sandpaper. Spoke maybe 40 words in the first hour. But when he did talk, every word landed exactly where it was supposed to. He fixed the soffit in an afternoon. I brought him iced tea and we sat on the tailgate of his truck, not saying much, watching the sun drop behind the tree line. It was the most comfortable silence I'd ever shared with another person. We started dating 2 weeks later. The first time Cole came to dinner at my parents' house, I could feel the temperature shift the moment he walked in. Mom looked at his calloused hands, his faded jeans, the truck parked in the driveway. So, what exactly do you do? She asked, pronouncing do like it had 3 syllables. Cole didn't flinch. General contracting, residential mostly. That was all she said. Dad stared at his plate. Brielle happened to be visiting that week. She was sweet to Cole's face, all smiles and, oh, how fun. But later that night, through the thin walls of my old bedroom, I heard her on the phone with Mom. He seems fine, but is that really the best Wanda can do? I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling. Cole was asleep in the guest room downstairs, and he had no idea that the people in this house had already decided he wasn't enough. Just like me. 6 months after the renovation, I stopped by the house on a Saturday to grab a box of old textbooks from my closet. My closet was empty, not just the textbooks, everything. My posters, my high school yearbooks, the quilt Grandma Davis made for my 12th birthday, all of it gone, shoved into a plastic bin in the garage. The room had been repainted, lavender, Brielle's favorite color. New throw pillows on the bed, a vanity mirror I'd never seen. a diffuser puffing eucalyptus into air that used to smell like my old vanilla candle. "Mom, what happened to my room?" She didn't even look up from her crossword. "Brielle needs a space when she visits. You don't live here anymore, Wanda." Something cold settled in my chest. I pushed past it. "Mom, can we talk about the house? About what you and Dad promised?" Dad was in the kitchen doorway. He heard me. I know he did because his hand froze on his coffee mug. Mom set her pen down. "We'll figure it out when the time comes. Don't be pushy." Pushy? I put 85,000 and we're grateful. But this is still our home. Don't make it awkward. Dad said nothing, just took his coffee and walked out to the porch. I drove home with the windows down, hoping the cold air would shake the feeling loose. It didn't. Cole was waiting at my apartment. He took one look at my face. "You okay?" "I don't know anymore." He didn't push. He just made me a grilled cheese and sat with me until I fell asleep on the couch. I should have listened to my gut that day, because the worst part hadn't even started. Cole proposed on a Sunday morning. No ring at first. Just him, standing in my tiny kitchen, holding 2 mugs of coffee and saying, "I want to build something with you. Not just houses." I said yes before he finished the sentence. I called Mom that afternoon. There was a pause on the line so long I checked if the call had dropped. "Already?" she said. Then, "Well, I suppose congratulations are in order." She didn't ask to see the ring. She didn't ask about the date. 1 week later, Brielle flew home, unannounced. She stayed 5 days, shopping trips with Mom, cooking with Dad, brunch at the cafe on Main Street. I saw the photos on Facebook. I wasn't invited, but the photos weren't the problem. My friend Darla, she works at the post office, knows everything that moves through Macon Hills, called me on a Wednesday night. "Hey, so, Brielle's been talking." "About what?" "About Cole. She told Patty Morrison and half the ladies at the salon that Cole pressured you into paying for the house, that he's got his eye on the property." I sat down on the edge of my bed. "That's not true." "I know, honey, but she said it like she was worried about you. Real convincing." I hung up and stared at the wall. My sister hadn't just insulted Cole behind closed doors anymore. She'd taken it public. In a town where a rumor at the salon hits every kitchen table by Sunday. And the worst part? She'd framed it as concern. "Between us, I think he's isolating her. She used to be so independent." That's what Darla said, Brielle told them, word for word, like she'd rehearsed it. 2 weeks later, Mom called. No small talk. No, "How are you?" Just a voice I barely recognized. Cold, clipped, certain. "Your father and I have been thinking, maybe the house should go to Brielle. She's struggling, Wanda. You have Cole." I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles went white. "Mom, I put $85,000 into that house. That was a gift to your family. Don't throw it in our faces." A gift. 10 years of my life. Repackaged as a gift so they could hand the result to someone who texted you guys figure it out while I signed the check. I tried one more time. "You and Dad promised." "Promises change. Circumstances change. Brielle needs stability right now, and frankly, with Cole in the picture, I'm not sure your priorities are where they should be." There it was. Not just the house, not just the money. She was using Brielle's lies about Cole as justification. That night, Dad called. Separate phone. His voice was quiet, tired. "Just let it go, kiddo. Your mom's mind is made up." "And yours?" A long pause. "I don't want to lose anybody." "You already are, Dad." He hung up first. I sat in the dark doing the math. $85,000. No documentation, no contract, no witnesses beyond a kitchen table promise. If I stayed silent, I would lose every cent. Brielle would sell that house the minute the deed was in her name, and my parents would never admit they'd been wrong. But if I fought back, I'd lose them entirely. I chose silence, not because I was afraid, because I didn't yet know how far they were willing to go. Cole found me at the kitchen table at midnight, staring at a bank statement on my laptop screen. The $85,000 transfer, highlighted in yellow, dated 22 months ago. He pulled up a chair. Didn't say anything at first, just looked at the screen, then at me. "Tell me everything." So I did. Mom's call, Dad's resignation, Brielle's rumor campaign, the room painted lavender, all of it. Cole listened without interrupting. When I finished, his jaw was tight but his voice was steady. Do you have the receipts from the renovation, the bank transfers? I nodded. Every email, every invoice, the bank statements right here. What about the contractor? Would he remember? Greg Holloway. He'd remember. I called him every week for 4 months. Cole leaned back. He folded his arms, and I could see him thinking, not reacting, not fuming, just calculating, like he was reading blueprints for a building that hadn't been built yet. Good. Keep all of that. Screenshots. Save them somewhere safe, not just your email. And Wanda? Don't confront them. Not yet. What are you thinking? He looked at me, not angry, not pitying, just certain. I'm not going to let them take what's yours, but we do this smart. He squeezed my hand once, then stood up, rinsed his mug, and went to bed like it was any other Tuesday. But it wasn't any other Tuesday. Because starting that night, I noticed something. Cole began spending an extra hour on his laptop every evening after dinner. He didn't explain. I didn't ask. I trusted him. And that turned out to be the best decision I ever made. We set the wedding for June 14th. Small budget, no help from my parents. Cole and I would pay for everything ourselves. A barn venue outside town, a local caterer, wildflowers from the farmer's market. Nothing fancy. Just ours. Mom made her position clear early. I'm not paying for a wedding to a man I don't approve of. We didn't ask you to, I said. She hung up. I expected the cold shoulder. What I didn't expect was what showed up on Facebook the following Saturday. A photo. Mom and Brielle, side by side, at a bridal boutique in Nashville. Brielle holding a white gown against her body. Mom beaming. Caption. Mother-daughter day. Brielle wasn't engaged. She didn't even have a boyfriend. Not one Mom knew about anyway. My phone buzzed. Kenna, are you seeing this? I stared at the photo. 47 likes. Comments. So gorgeous. And can't wait for the big day, and lucky mama. Not one person asked whose wedding they were shopping for. Because in the Mosley family, there was only one daughter worth celebrating. I didn't comment. I didn't react. I locked my phone, set it face down on the counter, and went back to addressing our wedding invitations by hand. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed replaying that photo, my mother's smile, the way she had her arm around Brielle like she was the bride, like I didn't exist. Cole rolled over. You're thinking too loud. Sorry. Don't be sorry. Just remember, people who need an audience to feel powerful always need a bigger one next time. I didn't fully understand what he meant. Not until the wedding. 3 weeks before the wedding, I drove to my parents' house to grab the last of my things from the garage. An old lamp, some winter clothes, a box of Christmas ornaments Grandma Davis left me. Brielle's car was in the driveway. I almost turned around. But my stuff was my stuff, and I was done rearranging my life around her schedule. The garage side door was unlocked. I stepped in, found my box, and started loading it into my trunk. That's when I heard her voice. Drifting through the open window above the garage, clear as a bell, Brielle was on FaceTime upstairs, laughing. Once I get that house, I'm listing it. Travis and I checked the comps. Easy 450. I froze, my hand on the box, my heart in my throat. A man's voice, tinny through the speaker. Your parents still don't know about me? Not yet. I'll introduce you after the house thing is done. One bomb at a time, babe. He laughed. She laughed louder. Then she said it. The sentence that rearranged every memory I had of the last 2 years. I told them Cole was only with Wanda for the property. They ate it up. Honestly, it was too easy. A pause. Then, Wanda's an idiot for pouring 85 grand into a house she'll never own. I stood there in that garage, my hands shaking, a box of Grandma's ornaments rattling against my chest. I could hear my own pulse in my ears. Every instinct told me to storm upstairs, to scream, to confront her with her own words still echoing off the walls. I didn't. I set the box down, walked to my car, and drove home in silence. That was the smartest thing I've ever done. I made it to the kitchen table before I broke. Not a big cry, just tears running quiet down my face while I sat there gripping the edge of the table like it might float away. Cole came in from the yard. He saw me and set down his water bottle without a word, pulled a chair beside me, waited. I heard her, Cole, Brielle, on the phone. I told him what she said. Every word. The listing price, the boyfriend, the lie about him. When I got to the part where she called me an idiot, my voice cracked. Not from the insult, but from the realization that my parents had rewritten their opinion of the man I loved based on a story my sister invented over FaceTime with a boyfriend they didn't even know existed. Cole didn't slam the table, didn't raise his voice. He sat very still and asked one question. Did you record it? I shook my head. Next time, keep your phone on record, just in case. He was quiet for a moment. Then, they're planning something for the wedding. I can feel it. Let me handle the slideshow setup. I blinked. The slideshow? I told the DJ I'd put together a photo reel for the reception. Let me manage that. It seemed like a small thing. A husband wanting to handle the wedding slideshow. But the way he said it, calm, deliberate, like a man measuring twice before he cuts, told me it wasn't small at all. If they want to make a scene, we'll let them. And then we'll make sure everyone sees the truth. I didn't ask him to explain. Cole wasn't a man who made promises he couldn't keep. Whatever he was building, I'd see it when it was done. Okay, I need to pause here for a second. Looking back, I know some of you might be thinking, why didn't you just cut them off right then? And honestly, I asked myself that too. But when it's your parents, the people who fed you, drove you to school, sat beside your bed when you had the flu, walking away isn't as simple as it sounds from the outside. So let me ask you, if you heard your sibling say those exact words about you, calling you an idiot, planning to sell your investment out from under you, what would your next move be? Tell me in the comments. Now, back to what happened next, because it got worse. Cole didn't talk about what he was doing. He just did it. Over the next 2 weeks, I'd catch glimpses. His laptop open on the kitchen counter at 6 a.m, a manila folder on his desk that wasn't there before, a phone call taken outside on the porch, voice too low for me to hear. One night, I came out of the shower and found him at the table with printed bank statements, mine, spread out in neat rows, highlighted, annotated. Those are my transfers to Greg Holloway, I said. Every one of them. 8 payments over 4 months, totaling $85,247. He didn't look up. I also pulled the email chain between you and Greg. Every invoice, every work order. Cole, what are you? I talked to a real estate attorney today. Name's Mitchell Farrow, out of Cookville. I sat down. A lawyer? Just a conversation. He said if you contributed a significant amount to the property, documented, traceable, and they try to deny you any interest, you have a strong case. Unjust enrichment. Tennessee recognizes it. He said it the way he'd say, the roof needs flashing. Factual, no drama. I'm not trying to take their house, Cole. I know, neither am I. He looked at me then. But if they try to take what's yours on our wedding day, I want the truth ready. He held up a USB drive. Small, black, ordinary. Slideshow backup, he said, and he slipped it into his shirt pocket. I watched him organize the papers back into the folder, finish his coffee, and rinse the mug, like it was any other evening. I didn't know what was on that USB. Not yet. I wouldn't know until the night of the wedding. 2 weeks before the wedding. I drove over to my parents' house to return a baking dish Mom had left at our place months ago. A quick drop-off. 5 minutes, tops. I didn't call ahead. Maybe I should have. The front door was unlocked. I walked through the foyer, dish in hand, and turned the corner into the kitchen. All 3 of them were at the table. Mom, Dad, and Brielle. Papers spread across the surface. A pen between Mom's fingers. Dad's reading glasses low on his nose. The moment I appeared, the conversation stopped. Not a pause, a full stop, like someone had hit mute on a television. Brielle's hand moved fast. She flipped a page face down. Mom's eyes darted to the paper, then back to me. Wanda, we didn't hear you come in. I was returning your dish. I held it up. Oh, thank you. Mom's smile was tight. Practiced. I set the dish on the counter. My eyes swept the table. I couldn't help it. Most of the papers were covered, but one corner of the page Brielle had flipped was still visible. I saw 4 letters, printed in bold. Quit. The beginning of a word. I didn't need to see the rest. Just going over some boring bills, Mom said. She was already gathering the pages into a stack. Of course, I smiled. I'll get out of your hair. I walked out slowly. I didn't run. I didn't accuse. In the car, I pulled out my phone and typed 2 words into the search bar. Quitclaim deed. A legal document that transfers property interest from one person to another. No sale required, no warranty, just a signature. They weren't just talking about taking the house anymore. They were drawing up the paperwork. 1 week before the wedding. A Tuesday afternoon. I was home, folding laundry, when the doorbell rang. Brielle. Standing on my porch in a linen sundress, hair curled, smile wide, like she was dropping off a casserole. Hey sis, got a minute? She walked in before I answered, sat at the kitchen table, pulled a single sheet of paper from her bag, and slid it across the surface. The header read, Acknowledgement of Gift. I picked it up. The language was simple. 1 paragraph. It stated that I, Wanda Mosley, acknowledge that my financial contribution of $85,000 toward the renovation of the Mosley family home was a voluntary gift, made without conditions, expectations, or claims to ownership. A signature line at the bottom, my name printed underneath. It's just a formality, Brielle said. She tilted her head, eyes soft. Mom wants peace of mind before the wedding. You know how she worries. I read it again, every word. Then I folded it, set it on the table, and looked at my sister. I'm not signing this, Brielle. The softness in her face flickered, just for a half second, a flash of something cold behind the smile. Then the mask came back. Fine, we'll talk about it later. She stood, grabbed her bag, and walked to the door. See you at the wedding. She left the paper on the table. Whether she forgot or left it on purpose, I'll never know. But I know this. Cole came home 20 minutes later, saw the document, and photographed every inch of it, front and back. Then he slid it into the manila folder without a word. I didn't spend 10 years saving to sign it away in 10 seconds. That's what I told my empty kitchen after she left. June 14th. My wedding day. Kenna laced the back of my dress in the bridal suite. A converted tack room with a full-length mirror propped against a barn beam. Simple white dress, no train. Red lipstick, my grandmother's pearl earrings that I'd kept in a velvet pouch since I was 19. You look incredible, Kenna said. I feel like I'm going to throw up. That's normal, also incredible. The venue was a restored barn 20 minutes outside Macon Hills. String lights draped from the rafters, long wooden farm tables, mason jars stuffed with wildflowers Cole had picked that morning. 150 guests. My co-workers from the animal clinic, Cole's crew from the contracting business, neighbors, old friends, a few of Cole's cousins from Knoxville. The ceremony was outdoors, under an oak tree. When I came around the corner and saw Cole standing at the altar in a charcoal gray suit, his eyes turned red before I even reached him. He blinked hard, bit his lip, took my hands like he was holding something he'd been waiting for his whole life. Then Kenna touched my arm. Wanda. Her voice was strange. Tight. You need to see this. I turned. Through the side window of the barn I could see the parking lot. A silver sedan had just pulled in. The door opened. Mom stepped out, head to toe in black. A long black dress, black cardigan, black shoes, funeral clothes. Behind her, Dad. Black suit, black tie, black expression, and behind him, Brielle. Also black. A fitted black dress and heels, sunglasses pushed up on her head. 3 people dressed for a burial, walking toward my wedding. Say the word, and I will lock that door, Kenna whispered. I didn't say the word. I wish I had. I didn't lock the door. I didn't cancel the ceremony. I did what I'd been doing my entire life in the Mosley family. I carried on. The 3 of them took seats in the front row. Black against a sea of pastels and summer florals. 150 people noticed. Nobody said a word. A woman on Cole's side, his Aunt Margine, leaned over to her husband and whispered something behind her program. I could read her lips from the altar. Is someone dead? The officiant kept going. I kept standing. My hands were in Cole's, and his thumbs pressed into my palms every time I started to tremble. During the vows, Cole went off script. Just one line. I will always protect what's ours. Not yours. Not mine. Ours. He held my eyes when he said it, but I saw Mom shift in her seat. Brielle crossed her arms. Dad stared at his shoes. We kissed. The crowd erupted. Cheers, whistles, Kenna ugly crying into a handkerchief. Everyone was on their feet. Everyone except 3 people in the front row. Mom sat rigid, hands clasped in her lap, black dress stark against the white folding chair. Brielle sat beside her with a small smile. Not a happy smile, the kind of smile you wear when you know something no one else does. Dad just looked tired, like a man who'd been told where to sit and what to wear and had stopped asking why a long time ago. I told myself it was fine. They'd made their statement. Black clothes, front row, stone faces, fine, let them mourn. I was alive and married and standing in the sunlight, and I refused to let them pull me into the dark. But they weren't done. The reception started beautifully. String lights glowing. First dance. Cole spun me slow under a canopy of Edison bulbs while our guests clinked glasses and the caterers set out plates. Then the DJ tapped the microphone. We'd love to open the floor for toasts. He didn't finish. My mother was already moving. She crossed the dance floor in 4 strides, took the microphone from the DJ's hand, not a grab, but firm enough that he let go out of sheer surprise, and turned to face the room. 150 people went silent. I want everyone here to know we are in mourning tonight. A murmur rippled through the tables. We are losing our daughter to a man who married her for our family home. I couldn't breathe. My chest felt like it had been filled with concrete. She wasn't done. Wanda, if you have any love left for this family, you will sign a document right now releasing any claim to our house. Your sister needs that home, not some outsider. She pointed at Cole, at my husband, at the man who'd just promised me forever under an oak tree 30 minutes ago. Bobby stood up beside her. He didn't speak. He just stood, a silent wall of endorsement. And then Brielle rose from her chair. She reached into her bag and pulled out a document, the same one she'd brought to my apartment, the acknowledgement of gift. She held it up, visible to the entire room, and walked toward me. She set the paper on the table in front of me, placed a pen on top, and she smiled. Not a nervous smile, not an embarrassed smile, the smile of someone who had already won. Silence. Not the comfortable kind, the kind that presses against your eardrums and makes the room feel like it's shrinking. 150 pairs of eyes locked onto me. The bride in white, sitting at her own reception table, a pen and a legal document placed in front of her like a verdict. Brielle leaned down, close enough that I could smell her perfume. Just sign it. It was never yours anyway. I looked at the paper, then at the pen, then at my sister's face. Calm, certain, already rehearsing her victory speech. Then I looked at my parents, Mom clutching the microphone like a gavel, Dad standing beside her with empty eyes. 2 people I had fed, cleaned for, poured every dollar I'd ever saved into, and they couldn't even look at me without resentment. My hands were flat on the table. I didn't pick up the pen. I didn't cry. Kenna was on her feet. I could see her from the corner of my eye, jaw tight, fists clenched, ready to charge. She was about to say something she'd regret on my behalf, and I loved her for it. But then a hand landed gently on Kenna's shoulder. Cole. He stood up from beside me, slow, deliberate. He buttoned his suit jacket, one button, the way he always does, and gave me a look. Steady eyes, a small nod, the kind that said, I got this. Then he walked away from the table, past the dance floor, past the bar, toward the DJ booth, where his laptop sat connected to the projector screen. He picked up the remote. 150 people watched my husband point a small black remote at a glowing white screen. Nobody, not even I, knew what was about to appear. All right, I have to be honest with you for a second. This is the part of the story I've replayed in my head 1,000 times. When Brielle put that pen in front of me, I almost picked it up. Not because she was right, but because part of me just wanted the humiliation to stop. 150 people watching the worst moment of your life. That weight is something I can't fully describe. So tell me, if you were sitting in that chair, in your wedding dress, with every person you know staring at you, would you have signed, or would you have waited? Drop your answer in the comments. What comes next is the reason I'm glad I didn't touch that pen. Cole didn't rush. He set the remote on the DJ table, leaned toward the laptop, and clicked twice. The projector screen, which had been cycling through wedding photos all evening, went dark for 1 second. Then it lit up again. The first image wasn't a photo of us, it was a bank statement. My bank statement. A highlighted wire transfer of $85,000, dated 22 months prior, routed directly to Holloway Construction, LLC. The memo line read, Mosley Family Home, full renovation. The murmuring started immediately. Heads turned, phones came up. Cole didn't speak. He just pressed the remote. Next slide. A printed email chain between me and Greg Holloway. 4 months of invoices, material lists, progress photos. The final line, total project cost, $85,247. Paid in full by Wanda Mosley. I watched my mother's hand slowly lower the microphone. Brielle's smile dimmed like a bulb on a dying circuit. Cole pressed again. Before and after photos of the house, side by side. The crumbling porch next to the rebuilt porch, the cracked foundation next to the sealed foundation, the rusted pipes next to gleaming copper, each set labeled, funded by Wanda Mosley. The room wasn't whispering anymore. People were leaning forward, reading every word on that screen like it was a courtroom exhibit. Aunt Margene, Cole's aunt, put her hand over her mouth. But Cole wasn't done, and the money wasn't the part that made them run. He looked at me across the room. One more nod, then he pressed the remote again, and the screen changed to something I had never seen before. Text messages, screenshots, blown up to 6 feet wide. My heart stopped. The first screenshot filled the screen, an iMessage conversation. Contact name at the top, Travis Keene. Brielle's outgoing messages in blue. 150 people read it at the same time. Brielle, Mom and Dad are so gullible, LOL. I told them Cole is only with Wanda for the house. They bought it immediately. The sound that moved through the room wasn't a gasp. It was lower. A collective exhale, like the air had been punched out of every chest at once. Cole pressed the remote. Brielle, once I get that house, I'm listing it. Travis and I checked. Easy $450,000. Chairs creaked. Someone at the back table stood up for a better look. Another click. Brielle, Wanda's an idiot for paying $85,000 into a house she'll never own. Dead silence. Then a woman at table 9, I think it was Paula from the clinic, said, "Oh my God," loud enough for the whole barn to hear. Cole pressed one final time. The last slide. A photograph of the acknowledgement of gift document. The one Brielle had brought to my apartment. The one she'd just placed in front of me, minutes ago, with a pen and a smile. The text was clear enough for every guest to read. It asked me to declare my $85,000 a voluntary gift with no claim to ownership. Cole turned away from the screen and looked at my family. His voice was calm, not loud, not angry, just clear. That's who told you your daughter's fiancé was a gold digger, your other daughter. Mom turned to Brielle. Brielle opened her mouth. Nothing came out. The pen was still on the table in front of me. I hadn't touched it. The room cracked open. Aunt Margene's voice carried from table 4. Lord have mercy. Then the noise came. Not shouting, just the low roar of 150 people processing the same betrayal at the same time. Whispers became sentences. Sentences became open conversation. Heads shook, eyes widened, phones lit up under tables. Brielle moved first. She snatched her bag from the chair, clutched it to her chest like a shield, and turned for the exit. Her heels cracked against the barn floor, fast, uneven, almost tripping on the threshold. Mom stood frozen at the microphone. The mic hung at her side, still on, picking up her breathing, quick and shallow, broadcast to every speaker in the room. "Bobby," she said, voice shaking. "Bobby, say something." Dad didn't say something. He shook his head once, slowly. Then he took Mom's elbow, not gently, not roughly, just mechanically, and steered her toward the door. We need to go. Now. Mom's heels clicked across the wooden floor. The microphone dropped from her hand and hit the stage with a dull thud that echoed through the speakers. She didn't pick it up. The barn door opened. June night air rushed in. 3 black silhouettes disappeared into the parking lot. An engine started. Headlights swept across the windows. Then they were gone. The silence lasted maybe 4 seconds. Then Cole walked back to our table, sat down beside me, and took my hand under the tablecloth. He turned toward the room. Same calm voice. Sorry about the delay, folks. The bar's still open. The laugh started at table 6 and spread like a wave. Then the applause. Then Kenna, sobbing into her champagne, raising her glass. I didn't cry. Not because I was strong. Because I was finally free. We danced until midnight. The caterers ran out of pulled pork. Kenna gave a toast that made every woman in the room cry, including herself, twice. 2 of Cole's cousins started a line dance that lasted 6 songs. Nobody mentioned my parents for the rest of the night. Not out loud, anyway. The next morning, Cole and I sat across from Mitchell Farrow in his office in Cookville. Wood-paneled walls, a ceiling fan clicking overhead, and a man who looked like he'd been practicing law since before I was born. He reviewed everything. Bank statements, email chains, contractor invoices, the before and after photos, the screenshot of the acknowledgement of gift document. This is clean, he said, tapping the folder. Traceable funds, documented improvements, no reimbursement. Tennessee courts recognize unjust enrichment claims. You've got a strong case. I don't want the house, I said. Farrow looked at me over his glasses. What do you want? My $85,000 back. That's it. He nodded. Drew up the civil claim that afternoon. Unjust enrichment. Recovery of funds contributed to a property under an unfulfilled promise. He attached every receipt, every transfer record, every photograph. The notice was sent to Janet and Robert Mosley by certified mail 3 days later. Included was a note from Farrow. Please be advised that the submitted acknowledgement of gift document, which your family attempted to have Miss Mosley sign, demonstrates awareness that the contribution was not, in fact, a gift. I didn't want their house. I didn't want revenge. I wanted exactly what I'd put in, not $1 more, not $1 less. I didn't want their house, I told Cole on the drive home. I wanted my money and my dignity, both. He reached across the console and held my hand. You've got both. 8 days after the wedding, my phone rang. Mom. I almost didn't answer, but something, maybe habit, maybe that stubborn thread of hope that never fully dies, made me pick up. Her voice was different, smaller. The command was gone. What replaced it wasn't warmth. It was disorientation. Like someone who'd walked into a room and forgotten why. Wanda, we need to talk about this lawyer letter. There's nothing to talk about, Mom. My attorney will handle it from here. You hired a lawyer? Against your own parents? You wore funeral clothes to my wedding, Mom. Silence. Then the pivot, the one I'd been expecting. You're tearing this family apart. Is this what Cole told you to do? Is this his idea? Same playbook, different day. I didn't wear black to your wedding, Mom. I heard her breath catch. For once, she didn't have a response. Goodbye, Mom. I hung up. Set the phone face down, poured myself a glass of water, and stood at the kitchen window watching Cole mow the yard next door for our elderly neighbor. Even when everything was on fire, that man mowed lawns. 2 days later, a text from Dad. Just 5 words. I should have spoken up. Then, I'm sorry. I read it 3 times. I sat with it for a long time, turning those words over in my hands like something fragile. I thought about responding. I typed out 4 different replies and deleted every one. I wasn't ready, not yet. Forgiveness isn't a switch you flip, it's a road you walk, and I hadn't decided yet whether I wanted to start walking. But I didn't delete his message. That was something. In a town like Macon Hills, you don't need the internet for news to go viral. You just need one church potluck. Within a week, everyone knew. The veterinary clinic receptionist. The guy at the hardware store. The teller at First Tennessee Credit Union. They'd either been at the wedding themselves or heard it from someone who was. Brielle worked at Pennington Realty, a small brokerage on Main Street run by a woman named Gail Pennington. Gail had been at the wedding, table 7. She'd watched the whole thing unfold with a glass of Merlot in one hand and her jaw on the floor. Monday morning, Gail called Brielle into her office and closed the door. "I saw those texts, Brielle. Every person at that wedding saw them. Gail, I can explain. I sell houses based on trust. I can't have someone with that kind of judgment representing my listings." Brielle was let go that afternoon. Then came Travis, the secret boyfriend, the man who was supposed to split the $450,000 payday. He vanished. Blocked her on every platform: phone, Instagram, Facebook, all of it. She called. No answer. She texted. Blue bubbles with no reply. That's the thing about people who are only there for the upside. When the upside disappears, so do they. A few days later, Kenna forwarded me a screenshot. Brielle had posted an old photo of the two of us, from a family barbecue years ago, with the caption, "Sisters forever, so grateful for family." "She's doing damage control," Kenna said. I stared at the photo. 2 girls in the sun, arms around each other. I barely recognized either of them. I didn't respond. I didn't repost. I didn't comment. Some things don't need a response. They need a boundary. 6 weeks after the wedding, Mitchell Farrow called. They've agreed to settle. I pulled over to the side of the road to take the call. I was on my way home from the clinic, still in scrubs, dog hair on my sleeve. "What are the terms?" "Full repayment, $85,000 over 36 months, equal installments, and you'll have a lien on the property until the balance is paid. Standard protection." "The house?" "Stays in their name. This was never about ownership, and the agreement reflects that." I leaned my head back against the seat, closed my eyes. $85,000. Coming back. Not because I'd screamed or threatened or posted a single word on social media, because I had receipts, because Cole had organized them, because Mitchell Farrow had turned a kitchen table betrayal into a clean legal document. Do I need to see them? No. Everything's handled through my office. They sign there, you sign here. No face-to-face required. Good. I signed the agreement the following Tuesday. A quiet room, a steady pen, my name on a line that actually meant something this time. Cole was in the waiting room reading a Field and Stream magazine. When I came out, he looked up. "Done?" "Done." He stood, tossed the magazine on the chair, and held the door open for me. We drove home with the windows down and the radio playing something neither of us really listened to. It was enough to just sit in the quiet of a finished thing. I didn't need their house. I needed them to acknowledge what I gave. And now, in black and white, on paper with a legal seal, they had. That was worth more than any property deed. Mom stopped going to church for 2 months. In Macon Hills, that's the equivalent of a public resignation. Sunday mornings at First Baptist weren't just about worship. They were the social scoreboard, and Janet Mosley had held a front row seat for 25 years. Head of the welcome committee, first to arrive, last to leave. The woman who organized every potluck, every bake sale, every holiday pageant. After the wedding, she disappeared. The front pew sat empty. When she finally came back in August, she slipped in through the side entrance and sat in the third to last row. Alone. Nobody confronted her. This was Tennessee. People didn't make scenes, they just adjusted. Conversations got shorter. Invitations stopped coming. The casserole train that used to arrive whenever someone was sick skipped the Mosley porch. Dad handled it differently. He started spending more time in the garden, alone, up early, out until dark, hands in the dirt like he was trying to grow something he couldn't name. He called me every 2 weeks, short calls, never more than 5 minutes. "How's the clinic?" "Busy. Good busy." "Cole doing okay?" "He's great, Dad." "Good. That's good." Awkward, stilted, but consistent. Every other Sunday. Like clockwork. Brielle moved to Nashville at the end of July, packed up in a weekend and left without a goodbye dinner. She didn't call Mom, she didn't call Dad, she didn't call me. When there was nothing left to take, Brielle left. I think that was the part that broke my mother more than anything. Not the wedding, not the lawyer letter, not the town's quiet judgment. It was realizing that the daughter she'd chosen, the golden child she'd built her world around, had never planned to stay. She was only ever there for the house. Cole found the house in September, a two-bedroom fixer-upper on Ridgeline Road, just past the county line. Overgrown yard, peeling siding, a kitchen that hadn't been updated since the 80s. The asking price was low enough to make a real estate agent wince. "It's got good bones," Cole said, standing in the driveway with his hands on his hips, squinting at the roofline like he was already drawing plans in his head. "It's got a raccoon in the attic. I'll negotiate with the raccoon." We bought it. Cash from the first few settlement payments, plus what we'd been saving. Our names on the deed, both of them, in ink. Cole did the renovation himself. Evenings and weekends, one room at a time. New floors, new countertops. Repaired the porch. I planted a vegetable garden along the south fence. Tomatoes, peppers, herbs. Something alive and growing that was purely ours. Kenna came over most Saturdays. She'd bring wine and gossip and sit on the porch while Cole cut trim in the garage and I planted basil. It was simple, ordinary, perfect. In October, a birthday card arrived in the mailbox. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting. Dad's. I opened it at the kitchen table. A drugstore card with a cartoon cake on the front. Inside, in careful ballpoint, "Happy birthday, kiddo. Proud of you." No signature from Mom, just Dad. I held it for a long time. Then I walked to the refrigerator, our refrigerator, in our house, and I stuck it right in the center, eye level. No church calendar blocking it. No stack of someone else's photos crowding it out. For the first time in 29 years, my name was the first thing I saw on a refrigerator. I don't hate my parents. I know that might surprise some of you after everything I just told you. But hate takes energy I'd rather spend on something that grows. What I do hate is the version of myself who sat at that kitchen table at 27 and handed over a cashier's check without asking for a single piece of paper in return. The girl who thought love and trust were the same thing. They're not. Love is a feeling. Trust is a contract. And every contract needs terms. My mother exploited a promise she never intended to keep. My sister invented a lie so convincing it turned my parents against the best man I've ever known. And my father, the man who taught me to ride a bike and bait a hook, stood there in a black suit and said nothing. But here's what I've learned, and I'm sharing it because I wish someone had said it to me 10 years ago. Loving someone doesn't mean handing them a blank check, literally or emotionally. There are still nights when I lie awake and see it. Mom at the microphone, Brielle's smile, the pen on the table, 150 faces watching me at the lowest moment of my life. Those images don't go away. I don't think they're supposed to. They're not wounds anymore. They're the scar tissue that reminds me where my limit is. But every morning I walk through my own front door, a door I helped pay for, attached to a house with my name on the deed, and I remember that I chose myself. I chose the man who stood up when everyone else sat down, and I do it again, every single time. Thanksgiving, 6 months after the wedding, Cole and I hosted. Our house, our kitchen, our table. A second-hand oak table he'd refinished with 3 coats of polyurethane and sanded until it was smooth enough to write on. Kenna came. A few friends from the clinic. 2 of Cole's cousins from Knoxville. A 7-pound turkey, cornbread dressing, and a sweet potato casserole that Cole made from his grandmother's recipe, which he will take to his grave before he shares. We'd just sat down when my phone buzzed. I almost ignored it. Then I saw the name. Dad. I stepped into the hallway. "Hey, kiddo." "Hey, Dad." A pause. The kind that lasts long enough to hear someone swallow. "Your mom isn't ready yet, but Can I come by? Just for an hour?" I looked through the doorway at Cole. He must have read my face because he raised his eyebrows. A question. I held up the phone and mouthed Dad. Cole nodded once. "Bring pie, Bobby," Cole called, loud enough for the phone to pick it up. Dad arrived 40 minutes later with a store-bought pecan pie and shoes that were too clean for a man who spent every morning in the garden. He stood on the porch like he wasn't sure he had the right house. He ate turkey. He complimented the dressing. He asked Cole about the porch railing and listened, actually listened, to the answer. Before he left, he hugged me, both arms, tight. The kind of hug that says everything a man like Bobby Mosley doesn't know how to put into words. I didn't say I forgive you. Not yet. That word is too big to rush. But I opened the door. And for now, that's enough. If you're watching this and you're in a family where your love is measured by how much you're willing to give up, I want you to know something. You're allowed to stop. You're allowed to love someone and still say no. You're allowed to care about your parents and still protect yourself. You're allowed to walk away from a table where you're only welcome when you're serving. Setting a boundary isn't betrayal. It isn't selfishness. It isn't being ungrateful. You know what is? Sitting in silence while the people who are supposed to protect you are the ones doing the damage. That's the real betrayal. And it's the one you're committing against yourself. My mother hasn't called me since that day in the lawyer's office. Maybe she will. Maybe she won't. That's her road to walk, and I can't carry her down it. My father calls every other Sunday, 5 minutes, awkward, consistent. He's trying. I see it. My sister is somewhere in Nashville. I don't know what she's doing. I don't check. The thread between us was cut cleanly, and I've stopped looking for the other end. Cole taught me something that I carry everywhere now. He said it the night before the wedding, while we were packing the car with table centerpieces and a cooler full of sweet tea. You don't need to shout to be heard. You just need to stand still and let the truth do the talking. I'm Wanda. I'm 29. And this is my house. Nobody else's name on it. Boundaries aren't walls. They're doors. You just get to choose who walks through. And for the first time in my life, I'm the one holding the key. That's my story. If it reminded you of something you've been through, or something you're still going through right now, please leave a comment. I read every single one, and I promise you, you're not alone in this. If you know someone who needs to hear this today, share it with them. Sometimes one story is all it takes to make someone realize they're allowed to stand up. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. I've linked another story in the description that I think you'll really want to hear. It's about a woman whose family tried to erase her from a will. She didn't let them. Thank you for being here. See you in the next one.